Aloha, and welcome to Sustainability 101, Core Concepts for Systemic Change. My name is Krista Heiser, and I'm a professor at Kapiolani Community College. I also serve as the UH System Sustainability Curriculum Coordinator. I first developed this presentation in 2008. So you could say that this is the 10-year anniversary of Sustainability 101. I like to share this presentation along with some of the stories about how the University of Hawaii's conversations about sustainability have evolved in the past 10 years. I worked on this presentation with several different people, specifically with Shauna Trivena, who was then a graduate student in political science and has since gone on to really study global entrepreneurship and sustainable business models. I've also updated the presentation with input from Dr. Wendy Kuntz, who's a biologist and ecologist, and Jamie Nakama, who has a background in anthropology and was the director for education at Hawaii Nature Center. So the presentation has also had a multidisciplinary input, and I hope you find it interesting. The first slide of the presentation states a goal. Says Hawaii is a model and world leader in sustainability. Now I'll tell you, in 2008, this first slide was presented almost ironically. We would make this statement and then unpack the many ways that Hawaii 10 years ago was not a model or a world leader in sustainability due to our shipped in food, our reliance on imported oil, some of the attitudes that were prevalent at the time, our lack of integration and understandings of climate change and impacts into curriculum, into majors, into career pathways, and just a general lack of really awareness around sustainability. But the amazing thing is that today, this statement has actually become true. I can really share that Hawaii is a model and a world leader in sustainability, and that's what this presentation will be about. We're going to start with talking about why it's so important for Hawaii to be a model and a world leader in sustainability. We'll talk about some of the problems that Hawaii faces, and then some of the assets that we have as a community and as a state to address sustainability and climate change. Another thing that I find interesting about this slide is that Shauna chose this image. This is from the UH Manoa campus, the Hawaii Nuakea School of Hawaiian Knowledge. I think she chose it because it was pretty and kind of future looking and had picture of Kalo. But I don't think it was chosen at the time with a real understanding of how important this conversation around the meeting of wisdoms would become. Hawaiian culture and indigenous ways of knowing are not always the same as sustainability. It seems like there would be a lot in common, and they certainly complement, support, and enhance each other. But they're not always the same, and there is indeed some tension. The executive policy on sustainability, crafted by the University of Hawaii in 2015, says that the university recognizes the rich foundation of indigenous Hawaiian cultural values and knowledge and seeks to learn from this foundation to develop a uniquely strong response to climate change and sustainability challenges. It's certainly an important part of how Hawaii is a model and a world leader in sustainability. Hawaii is a central microcosm of the world. As you know, Hawaii is the most remote inhabited place on the planet. So when we look at the big picture of why Hawaii matters globally, we can look at the relationships that Hawaii has throughout the world. These white arrows represent some of the 24 sister cities that Hawaii has relationship with. So we have connections with other indigenous communities, with other major metropolitan areas, with other tourist destinations. We have relationships with the Pacific, with other island nations. And as a hub of the Asia-Pacific region, we're a bridge between East and West. We're also a bit of a canary in the coal mine, experiencing impacts from climate change even today, and sometimes in an accelerated or in a unique fashion. You may have seen images like this before. This is a computer model of the impact of, say, 2.5 feet of sea level rise. Since our course is about landscapes, think about what does sea level rise do to a familiar landscape such as Waikiki? What does this change do to our economic drivers, to the career fields that are of interest and available to you? What does this change in our landscape do to the way we recreate, to the surf, to urban infrastructure? It's really the starting point for thinking about how climate change and sustainability issues impact our landscapes, and then how that impacts our lives. Just last month, a hurricane basically took out East Island in the Northwest Hawaiian Islands, right? This is one of those small islands in the Hawaiian island chain, but from the perspective of an indigenous view of Hawaii, my understanding is that every island is part of the Aina, not just the places where we live, right? So East Island was important as a nesting ground for turtles and seals and birds, and also as part of the Hawaiian Islands. When this occurred basically overnight, one of the university's top climatologists, Dr. Chip Fletcher, someone that I personally admire for the many people that he has educated about the impacts of climate change. So he's often quoted in the media. And in Civil Beat, the day after East Island disappeared, Chip Fletcher was quoted saying, "I had a holy shit moment, thinking, oh my God, it's gone. One more chink in the wall of the retreat of ecosystem diversity on this planet being dismantled." We will get to learn from Dr. Chip Fletcher in a future video about climate change. And one thing that I appreciate about him is his ability to, share these things with authenticity and with a sense of urgency. It's also important that we be able to talk about facts, right? This is the most recent report on sea level rise in Hawaii. So the URL is there at the top, and you can actually play around with the sea level rise and look at a map like this, even on different parts of Hawaii. So this is a 3.2 foot scenario. I hear a lot of people say things like, oh, Waikiki is going to be underwater. Well, it's not going to be underwater. Waikiki could experience 1.1 feet of sea level rise by the year 2050. So think about that. It's about 30 years from now. How old will you be? Where will you be? What is your relationship going to be to some of these areas? How does 1.1 feet by 2050 impact you, right? And then how does 3.2 feet by the end of the century impact, let's say, your children? You see my point? It's very important that we understand these projections, and they are only projections, but that we understand them to the best of our ability and use specific facts without saying things like Waikiki will be underwater and we're all going to die. That is in fact not true. Places like Tuvalu and other islands in the Pacific, Micronesia, as we know, will be underwater just like we saw with East Island. These are very low-lying islands with population density. What we want to be thinking about in Hawaii is 143 million people experiencing a forced migration due to climate change. How do they preserve their cultures? Where do they go? How many will come to Hawaii? And how will Hawaii embrace these other Pacific cultures who have lost their land base? This is a really important thing to think about, and pretty much an unprecedented thing to think about. Some of the other aspects, aside from sea level rise, that we need to think about in Hawaii is our waste management. Oahu produces 1.6 million tons of waste every year. This includes the waste produced by tourists, which is important to think about. Our waste is basically burned at H-Power, a waste to energy facility, which handles 800,000 tons of that waste. So that's good news, because that's waste that's not going into the landfill, and that is in fact converted into electricity. It's called waste to energy and produces about 6% of Hawaii's renewable energy per year. It's certainly an important part of the equation. On the other hand, the process isn't quite perfect, and it does produce a toxic byproduct, kind of like a brick of ash that does get sent into the landfill. And it in a way discourages us from reducing consumption because they just say, oh, we have capacity, we can burn it. So it's a very complex issue that impacts our waste management. Another thing that impacts the way we deal with our waste is the fact that the recycling system is broken. You've likely heard that China and other places are simply choosing to no longer accept the recycling stream from countries like the US and places like Hawaii. We can't recycle on island. So we have to ship all of our recycling somewhere, and that shipping produces carbon and costs money. And in fact, right now, there's really nowhere to ship it to. So the recycling system is broken. Part of this is because our recycling was highly contaminated, and part of it is because these places don't want to deal with the mess that recycling is. So recycling has made us feel good for a long time, but we really need to face the fact that the recycling system is broken. So what are we going to do about that? A third reason that it's important for Hawaii to address its sustainability issues is energy. We have the nation's highest electricity rates, as I'm sure your family has felt that impact. We hear a lot about renewable energy, and we'll talk about that more. Residential solar is increasing faster in Hawaii than anywhere else in the United States. And yet, again, rather than talking about, oh, isn't renewable energy great? I think it's important to talk about where we're actually at. The fact is that 68% of our energy is still produced by oil. 20% by coal. Yes, we actually import coal and convert it into electricity. So we do want to be talking about renewable energy, and we want to start from the place of where are we actually at. So right now, 2017, 11% of Oahu's energy made from renewable sources. Now that percentage is much larger on the island of Hawaii because they have geothermal energy, which has its own little basket of issues related to possible instabilities, related to tensions with spiritual frameworks in Hawaii, and other issues related to land management. So when we talk about renewable energy, yes, we want renewable energy. We have to figure it out, but it is a complex conversation. The fact remains that we're still very reliant on oil, importing at a cost of over $5 billion a year. So our reliance on outside imported oil is still approximately 30 barrels of oil. And this reliance is really the thing that most impacts us from being a model and a world leader in sustainability. The fourth reason it's so important for Hawaii to address sustainability is issues of equity and social justice, right? So just for one, you see this is a development in Kaka'ako. We see all these condos being put up, and we also see at the same time such a rapid increase in homelessness. Hawaii is third in the United States for its per capita rate of homelessness, with over 7,000 homeless individuals, a quarter of which are children. And when you look at this in relationship to the development, there's something that is incompatible with sustainability paradigm. So something most important to thinking about sustainability is that how can sustainability include and address these issues of equity? And then lastly, the last reason it's so important for Hawaii is that we are known as the endangered species capital of the world. 98% of the endemic species listed as endangered are from Hawaii. So these are pictures of endemic species, which are all endangered: the silver sword, the happy-faced spider, the Hawaiian stilt monk seals, and the palila bird. So this loss of biodiversity impacts everything. And then the last fact that I would share is that ecologists say that over 1 million species will be lost in the next 50 years. Sometimes species are lost before we even discover them. These are 5 reasons that it's so important that Hawaii is a model and a world leader in sustainability. And in part 2, we'll talk about what we can do about it.